Audiobook Masters, listen to your imagination.
Red Apple Dreams by Siphiwo Mahala. Narrated by Hangwi Liphadzi. I don't know when I started dreaming. I cannot even recall the first time I recognized dreams as dreams. Oftentimes, I cannot differentiate between what I have dreamed and what I have imagined. My dreams are intertwined with my thoughts and visions. Sometimes, thoughts and visions become dreams, and dreams become thoughts and visions. Other times, I dream my own thoughts and see visions from my dreams. In that complex continuum, there are certain thoughts, dreams, and visions that seem to linger indefinitely in my subconscious. The red apple is the most dominant feature in this realm. It was real before it became a dream, a recurring dream. It started invading my thoughts. I saw visions of the apple even during the day and when I lingered between sleep and wakefulness. I got the red apple from my mother. It is 30 years since my mother died. I don't know where her grave is. I can't even remember what she looked like. There are no photos. The image of my mother's face has faded, but her memories remain. I can remember her distinct voice as she sang her favorite hymn. She would fill the room with melody as she belted out the words, "I am made of love. When I was lost, love looked and found me." I would hang on to her hand as she sang, for I wanted everybody to know that she was my mother. But she was not there when I escaped from school. It was my first year at school. There was a thunderous explosion, followed by piercing screams, and then the rattling sound of machine guns. Our class teacher rushed to the door and craned her neck as she inspected the happenings outside. My classmate started weeping, and another teacher came running into the classroom, eyes like light bulbs. There was pandemonium outside, children crying, women screaming, and teachers yelling. Children were running helter-skelter across the schoolyard. Some of my classmates saw their mothers on the school lawn and sneaked out to run towards them. The two teachers stood in the doorway, telling us not to panic. But they looked panicky. I heard more gunshots not too far away. Some more of my fellows escaped through the windows in search of their parents. My mother was not there. I saw a child falling. A mother stepped over a child as she desperately tried to get a hold of her own child. A mother running towards her child tripped over the fallen child. She tried to grab another woman as she fell. They both fell on top of a child. There was a stampede as bodies tried to get up and fell when others stumbled over. The human pile grew as more people fell. I kept looking for my mother, and still she was not there. One after another, my classmates escaped through the windows until I was the only one left. I stood there next to the two teachers. My throat and nose started burning. My eyes got itchy. I began to cough. There were tears in my eyes, and I knew I was experiencing the effects of tear gas. I had felt tear gas before. Where there was tear gas, there was never a happy ending. The teachers were still blocking the way while looking terrified and watching the commotion outside. I got out between the legs of my class teacher. I could hear her shouting, "Hey, Wen, we are happy. Where do you think you are going? Come back here." There was no turning back. I ran across the lawn and out of the schoolyard. I was out in the streets, running away. We were told that people called comrades were the troublemakers. We also knew that the tear gas and the bullets came from the police. I was running away from school. I was running away from trouble. I didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to get away from the wailing, the gunshots, and the tear gas. I ran and ran and ran, and as I was running, I was looking ahead. Far away in the distance, at the bottom of Vellum Street, I could see a tiny figure with a maroon beret. She was standing helplessly in the middle of the street. My heart beat faster. There was an added spring in my stride. She opened her arms as I came close, and I threw myself into her embrace. I felt secure, even though we were still on the street. "I'm glad you are safe," she spoke in a near whisper. That was the first of the school disruptions I would experience. The school itself was burned down, and we then had to do something called platooning. Because there were fewer classrooms than there were children eager to get an education, one set of students would go to school early in the morning and break at midday, and the next set would attend from midday until late afternoon. This continued until more school buildings were burned and schools were shut down in 1985. This was when I was sent to a country called Ciskei, where my grandmother had to look after me and 11 other grandchildren. My grandparents had been sent to the Ciskei because they were told that their kind belonged there. My father was allowed to remain in the city because he had a job serving the white man in Grahamstown. As a pensioner, my grandmother received the old age grant once every 2 months. With more than a dozen mouths to feed and groceries arriving sporadically from my parents in South Africa, food was a scarce resource. We had to share every morsel we could find. I had to get used to the new routine of not eating before going to school. Sometimes there'd be no food even after school. One day in July 1986, I came back from school, hungry and tired, as always. There was a tiny woman in the kitchen. She had her maroon leather bag draped over her shoulder. I ran to her and embraced her from behind. She turned around and lifted me up. A lovely smile spread across her face. I saw love there. "When did you get here?" I wondered. "Only this morning," she said. "Why didn't you come with my father?" "Because he's got to work. I thought I should come see you and your sister." "Are you gonna stay with us here?" "No, I'll be going back soon." She rummaged in her handbag and fished out a red apple. "Here, this is what I brought you," she said. It was a deep red that glimmered with richness. I could tell that it was juicy and sweet just by looking at it. I started salivating. I had never seen an apple as ripe as that one before. "Is it for me? What about the others?" I said, feigning concern for my cousins. She said she had brought other things for them. I took a bite of that red apple. I could feel the juice dripping down the sides of my mouth. It tasted as sweet as I had imagined. I never had such a fulfilling experience of eating in my entire life. The feeling of that first bite stayed with me for the past 30 years. My mouth is watering right now at this moment. When I got back from school the next day, my mother had returned to Grahamstown. A few days later, my policeman uncle and his wife came to fetch my sister and me. It was always exciting to go home, but I didn't see the excitement in my sister's eyes on this occasion. The atmosphere in the car was tense and somber, with the adults exchanging suspicious glances as the Volvo meandered through the gorges. My sister didn't talk much. I didn't care what their issues were. I was just looking forward to being with my parents. When we got home, the mattress was on the floor. Adults spoke in hushed voices. Mothers of the community were informed that the kids had arrived. We were sat down. My 11-year-old mind realized that something was amiss. Bantwana bam, my children, started my aunt. My sister did not wait to hear one more word. She burst out crying. I sat there, motionless. A single tear trickled down my left cheek. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to hear what the mothers had to say. I sat there, wondering whether it was my father or my mother who had died. It was certain there was death in the family. The question was who? The puzzle was solved as I saw my father arriving, getting out of a relative's car. He was wearing a blue shirt and a hat, and I knew that I no longer had a mother. But no one came to tell me what happened. I could hear whispers, as if people were shocked at the way she died. But I didn't know how my mother had died. I wanted to know why she died. I wanted to know her final thoughts before she gasped her last breath. But no one was talking to me. I hoped that all would be revealed at the funeral. It would be the first funeral I had ever attended. I was looking forward to it. I wanted to see my mother's remains. A long black car came, and I knew it was carrying a coffin that bore my mother's mortal remains. The brown coffin was placed in our yard, and a bearded teacher in strange robes started the service. He called upon the Lord to receive the spirit of the departed. His voice grew hoarse as he shouted at the Creator, white foam forming around his mouth. I wondered if this preacher knew that the departed had children who wanted to see her for the last time. When the man in robes announced that we were about to go to the cemetery, my hopes were dashed. I cried openly. My uncle told me not to cry. I was given water to drink. No one ever asked why I was crying. The pallbearers placed the coffin in the hearse. We followed the long black car as it took my mother to her final resting place. I was still hoping to have one last look at her face, to see if she would still exude her beauty and calmness in death. But I was told to pour dust over her coffin. Shovels dug furiously and filled the grave with soil. My mother was buried in the deep hole. We left her there. I could only see my mother in my dreams. With every dream, there was the red apple. I would wake up just as I was about to take a bite. Even while I was awake, I would try to continue with the dream, to revisit the delicious taste of the red apple and the divine feeling of having a mother. At times, I would even induce dreams for the sheer joy of seeing visions of her. Vivid imagination can lead to dreaming. Without warning, the red apple dreams stopped coming. When I went to look for my mother's grave, it was not there. My mother's smile vanished from memory. I could no longer see my mother's face, neither in my dreams, nor visions, nor thoughts. Only vague memories remained. My mother's image appeared only as a silhouette in my thoughts, her face covered by the veil of the grave. Now, every time I try to imagine what my mother once looked like, all I see is that ripe, shiny, red apple. When I listen hard and try to remember her words, I hear something that sounds faintly like her voice. But I never see the face nor the smile that used to gladden my heart. In her last dream appearance, she didn't say goodbye. If I had known that that would be her last visitation, I would have done more to appreciate the moment. I would have shut my eyes a bit harder. I would have slept a little longer. I would have hung onto the visions more tightly just to savor the moment. The only way I could stay in touch with my mother. Maybe I just miss my mother.
Audiobook Masters, listen to your imagination.